We've all had to adapt to a new world once lockdown began. But what was it like for partners, charities, leaders, business? How do they cope? And what do they do? And more importantly, what have they learned? My name is Stephen George. I'm a fundraising and leadership coach, guide and trainer. Now, I work with non-profit leaders and teams to help them discover better ways to be a better leader and to raise more money and to make a bigger impact. In this mini-series of videos, I talk with leaders across the non-profit world about their lockdown lessons. And in this video, I talk with Helen Mackenzie, founder, chief executive of Purity, a specialist telephone agency working with charities who just want to fundraise or simply communicate with their supporters and potential supporters through those really valuable, personal, one-to-one telephone calls. Now, Helen founded the agency in 2017, and in the 3 years since, Purity has raised over £20 million for its charity partners. So Helen tells a story of looming lockdown and the entire shift of an office-based operation to a home-based one. How she and the team got things up and running, what supporters told them during that process, and how she helped face-to-face runners, fundraisers normally out on the street, how to get them to use their amazing skills on the telephone. Powerful story, inspiring lessons. So this series is brought to you with the help of Turner PR. They're a team of communication specialists focused on helping you reach and engage the charity sector, provide bespoke PR strategies, content solutions, strategic partnerships, working with you to raise your voice and profile. They're fantastic, and thank you very much for supporting this little mini series. So step back, tune in, enjoy the conversation. Today's special guest, actually, kicking off this lockdown lessons, an opportunity to reflect a little bit of where we're at, is Helen Mackenzie. Helen is chief executive of Purity. So Helen, great to have this conversation. I know you've got a fascinating story that I'm really interested in trying to unpack with you a little bit about where that was. Tell us a bit about you, first of all, and yourself and the organisation that you're chief executive of.
Okay, yeah. Well, I came into the charity sector in 2014. So I'm not a lifelong charity sector person. However, before that, for about 20 years, I did a lot of fundraising events, like large black tie balls and treks and all kinds of different things, and gathered a lot of people together to do that in support of Childline and NSPCC. So I did that for about 20 years, and on a voluntary basis, and that kind of gave me the bug, I think, of the charity sector and maybe midlife crisis, call it what you will. I decided that I really wasn't very happy in my old world, which was the business world in finance, corporate finance, and I made the jump in 2014. And so for a few years, I kind of put myself through a bit of a self-apprenticeship, I suppose you'd call it, by doing different types of fundraising on a professional basis, working for Save the Children for a while, and they're heading up the new business in corporate partnerships, and then I did some face-to-face fundraising at a time when the sector was in turmoil. So that was a very interesting time for me to actually find out whether people do want to talk to people about who they want to support, whether they do want to be approached, whether what they felt about charities. And at that time, as I say, there was some really bad headlines, as you can imagine. We all know the Olive Cook moment, and that's when I was talking to people, and it showed me that people do want to support charities. It showed me that as long as you're talking to them in the right way, with respect, and giving them the space to actually not be pushy, just talk about what they're interested in. People want to know what's happening with their money. They want to know what the charity's doing, and they want to support. And it's usually got a very personal connection. So that was a really interesting time for me, and it was I would say invaluable to the journey that I've gone on. I then had the call from someone who had bought a couple of telephone agencies, and they didn't have any charity experience, so they asked me if I could come in and look at what was pure fundraising at the time. And so I went to have a look, because I had the charity and the business side, so that was why they wanted me to have a look. And I came across a group of individuals there that were highly passionate about what they did, telephone fundraising, but in a difficult time, a very difficult time at that point. unfortunately, Pure didn't survive, and at that time we had the opportunity to start Purity, and that was actually, we made our first phone call 3 years ago this weekend, so it's our 3rd anniversary, which is great. But it came out of a team who really wanted to do some great stuff in the sector. I'm personally very, very passionate and bang on about well-being and workplace culture, and that was something that we were starting to work with at Pure, and obviously equality. And at the time, I just felt it was the perfect team to be able to launch into something new that was fit for the sector as it is now, after all the bad headlines, and to do something where ethics and quality were at the core of absolutely everything, as well as team well-being. So yeah, we've been trading for 3 years. We started with 3 clients. We've now got about 33 clients, and it's been going really, really well. It's good. That's us, yeah.
It's an interesting journey because you that trauma of 3 years ago was really difficult for not just the sector but a lot of the partners who's, I think people don't really fully appreciate that, a lot of great businesses went under at that point. A lot of great people, great contributors and people who gave great service and that actually didn't survive or make that through. And for a lot of them, that's more than tough, because a lot of them have their own, they've got the mortgages on the line, they've got their own businesses. Is a different level of risk for many, many people. So it's good to see that, it's in that sense that it came from that moment and has kind of moved forward.
Yeah.
So you took the essence of that, but we've all been through this crazy time. So, and I think the point of this is, in a sense, lockdown lessons. So it allows you, because actually, really interestingly, everyone's quite reflective of the time before. People are calling it BC now, before coronavirus. BC. So the time before, and then in having to adapt, and then some ability to learn a little bit about what happened. Tell us, because I can only imagine what that would have been. Presumably, your operation was in an office, people next to each other, that kind of model. Talk us through what happened and how that realization that you had to kind of technically shut down happened. What was that like for you?
Gosh, it's ingrained in my memory.
I bet.
What a journey, yeah. It was interesting because I was out in Ghana actually. I came back from Ghana on the 11th of March. So I was out there on a charity trip. I'm a trustee of a small charity, international development charity out there. So whilst I was in Ghana, you could see it unfolding and seeing it escalating, but obviously could do very little from there. And landed back on the 11th, went straight into work. And at that point, we just went straight into contingency planning. It's like, this is going to happen. Lockdown's going to happen. We didn't expect it as soon as it was, but it was like, this is going to happen. What can we do? I did not think, if you'd asked me 5 months ago if we'd be a home-based business or we could be a home-based business, I would have said no. The charities won't agree to it. It's too risky. You can't have the same level of control. They're the things that I would have been saying. So yeah, we had an office, a 70-seater office. The back office all had laptops, so we already had a very flexible approach to home working for the back office. And I always said it would be great if I could offer that to the fundraisers, but we can't. But obviously this put us in a position where I really felt we had no choice. So we put the contingency plan, and we the way we set up 3 years ago, everything was cloud-based. So we had a head start with that. Our dialer system, everything else was completely cloud-based, and it was a secure system. So as far as data protection and that side of things, we were very secure anyway. And we had what we thought was a good disaster recovery plan. We obviously now have an amazing disaster recovery plan. It was tested, absolutely tested. But yeah, we obviously didn't have this in the list of things that could possibly go wrong. But during that week, we contingency planned together, and we got that out to the charities to say, will you allow us to do this? Because that was the first thing. Will they let it happen? And our largest client at the time, Greenpeace, they said yes straight away, which was amazing. And then within the course of a week, every single client said yes. That agility from the charities for me was huge, because if we'd said, without this happening, we want to take our business to a home-based business, then that would have taken probably 6 months to get agreed.
Easily.
But yeah, if not more.
Yeah.
But every one of them agreed it and were amazing in how fast they worked through the contingency plan with us. So that was the first thing. On the other side was we had, I don't know, 40 desktops in the office, and we had, I think, 67 fundraisers. So not everybody had a desktop. It was different shifts that people work around. So you're sharing desktops. So we thought, right, the first thing we need to do is order a load of laptops. So we had the laptops on order, and we decided just the first 10 to get out and try with some of the more vulnerable in the office. And in that week, between the 11th and the 18th, when we made the final decision, it changed so much even in that week. I could see people getting nervous, and the well-being of the team became more and more important to me. And we have a really mixed age of fundraisers. So we have people who are more towards the elderly side, and at that time it was all about age and underlying symptoms, was the main thing that people were talking about. And so I was concerned about some people as well who I knew had underlying symptoms. So we were just about to get the 10 out. We literally had delivered them, but nobody had started calling from home. We had one, sorry, that had tested and it worked. And then on the 18th, I don't remember, the Wednesday, the 18th, the rumour mill went mad. It went completely mad. And I just remember sitting in the office and my phone was messages from about 5 people. I know someone who knows someone who knows someone who there's going to be a lockdown Friday. It's going to be Friday.
I remember that.
You remember?
I still remember that. It was a kind of, there was a, you're absolutely right. Isn't it funny how we forget that? I remember that weekend, somebody had heard somebody who knew somebody in the Met, who knew somebody who was Boris Johnson's hairdresser or something, nonsense that used to fly around. All these rumours. He hasn't got a hairdresser, has he? No. But he went,
escalated during the day.
Everybody knew, and they went, we're into lockdown. And there was a kind of strange panic on that. Honestly, it was a horrible moment because, so what did you do when that rumour went into?
It was about 4:00 on Wednesday 18th. And so I called anybody who was back office in the office, called them in and said, we've got to escalate this, because the plan was to do it over maybe 2 or 3 weeks, gradually get, and we had to, like, the IT side of setting the laptops up.
Yeah.
It's a closed system, so we can't use their laptops. They have to use ours. We have to get the laptops to them. Completely closed system that they can only use it for our work. So we thought we would roll it out over 2 or 3 weeks. But I sat there and just said, we're going to have to do this, and we need to do it now. Which is, in hindsight, is the best thing that I could have done. But it was just instinctive. This is, if they lock down on Friday, I don't know whether we'll be able to go back in the office. I don't know whether we'll be able to go in and pick the kit up. We didn't know what lockdown meant.
No one did.
Never had it. So we literally went out and just announced it to the fundraisers and said, can you all come off the phones? This is what we're going to do. Over the next 2 days, we will be delivering all these desktops to as many people as we possibly can. We'll be calling you if you can be in. And we sent them home. So we sent them home on the Wednesday at 5. And then the next 2 days, we just had a system going of packing, putting them in cars and driving around the Brighton area, and delivering those 40 desktops to people. So that, along with the 10 laptops that we bought, by the Monday we were up and running with 50 fundraisers at home, which was amazing. It was amazing in that I couldn't have thought that was possible, but it was. The whole team were amazing in just getting behind it and saying, okay, this is what to do. We've got to do it. Obviously, there were so many things to be thinking about. We knew that it could work in theory. In theory, yes, it's there, but in practice, how does that actually work? How do you communicate? I mean, we communicate on Teams, and Teams is our best friend. But how does that actually work? And how do you monitor? And how do you train? All that side of things was the side that we knew that we had to really pin down. But we got 50 people up and running for the Monday. And that was the day, obviously, lockdown was announced on the Monday. So we got there by the skin of our teeth. We were there. We had the whole office cleared and ready to go. So yeah, that was the first bit.
You hadn't have done that in those 2 days. It was the 2 days, wasn't it? In the rumor was quite helpful, because I think it did for some people. I have heard this before. People going, what does that, we don't know what it means, you know, a full lockdown in a kind of British society. Everyone's got hindsight now, but that's so unprecedented that you think, no, there must be, but 2 days notice and then the ability to go, well, maybe let's do this, let's make the decision.
Yeah.
So tell us before, I'm interested in then how it unfolded. What's the practical things? Given that you've got a cloud-based operation, but what are the practical things that made it difficult to have people at home delivering the service that you had when they were in the same building together? What was the practical stuff that was in the way for that made that hard?
I mean, we had so many challenges, and we still have them. We're still learning every day about what works and what doesn't. But and one of the things was just purely we'd got in early with the first lot of laptops, and we buy refurb laptops, green credentials. We try and do everything very green, so we always buy refurbished laptops. And after that first delivery, trying to actually get more kit, because we had 19 people that we had to furlough who couldn't work from home for whatever reason. It could be that they've got young children there. It could be that their internet wasn't strong enough, or they're just not in the environment, the right environment to be able to call from home. So we lost 19 people straight away. We had a lot of work on the books, and that increased because one of our clients always dealt with 2 agencies, and the other agency decided not to move forward, so they furloughed their staff. They're back up and running now, but to start off with, they furloughed their staff, so we ended up getting all their work as well. So our work was increasing as we lost 19 people. So really were we having to source kit and work out how to communicate with the people we already had. We also very quickly realized we had to work out how to train new people and interview, train, and bring on board new ones. So the kit, the resource on IT, because the simple things like we have when setting up the Zoom meeting, you know, the tech going wrong, the headsets not working, all those kind of things were a full-time job on their own. And at the same time, my IT guys were trying to set up campaigns and do all the normal stuff that they do. And then also setting up all these laptops. So that was one side, that we had to increase resource immediately on the IT side. The other side is just that there's the wellbeing side. When you're in the office, you can see how someone's feeling. You can generally tell how they are from how they're reacting. But when you're just seeing their face, and the people with the desktops, they don't have cameras, so we're trying to get webcams. Another thing that we're still having difficulty, but getting the webcams sorted. So with the laptops we could see people, but with the desktops we can't. So you're only going from what they're saying, you're only going from what they're writing down on messaging. And so monitoring how people are feeling when in the middle of something that was a really difficult situation, it's a really frightening situation. Everybody's situation is different, and that's something that really came to the fore very quickly. You know, some people are living with small children in a small house with no garden, which is challenging in itself. Some people live on their own in an apartment, and that's challenging in itself. Yeah. Or balancing family, or whatever it is. That everybody's situation is unique, and so monitoring that well-being is something that we're still working on. We set up a Wellbeing Wednesday meeting where we do all kinds of things. Last week we had Purity's Got Talent, which was amazing. So we had lots of people performing. We've got a very creative bunch of fundraisers and back office. So we had poetry and music and all kinds of things. It was fantastic. So we've done bingo and quizzes, and so we do that to try and just take it away from the phones for a while and just connect as a team. Then it's the training and the monitoring, and that the technical side of that is again very quickly we had to increase our coaching team from 10 to 16 people, because the time it takes. So if you have a new person in the office who's learning how to telephone fundraise, you can have a coach with 3 or 4 new people listening and talking and feeding back at the same time. you have to have one-on-one. So basically it's a listening system that you can
Okay.
listen and talk to someone at the same time. So you're listening to their call, you're coaching them, you're talking to them, but that's one-on-one. That's one-on-one. And so the resource is much, much different. And the training takes longer. So whereas normally we would expect that someone can be up and running within a couple of weeks, it's still the training it is ongoing for a lot longer than that, but they can be up and running. Whereas now it definitely, you have to add at least a week onto everything that we do to make it work. But I'm trying to think of any other challenges. They're the main challenges, and communication. So the fundraising managers, when they're in the office and they've got everybody around, if there's queries, the queries can be handled really easily. Someone come up, ask a question, go back.
People forget that, don't you? You know,
it's so difficult, and I think my fundraising managers, we've had to increase by 2 extra ones very quickly, because the stress on them was what do you call the game where you knock the is it whack a weasel or something?
Whack the rat thing, isn't it? It's a rat or a weasel.
Yeah, and then that was the way they described it to me, is that that's all they were doing all day. They had no time to plan or think or strategize or anything, because all they were doing was responding to queries the whole time throughout the shift. So it was, again, very obvious we needed people who could do that part of it, so that they could do the strategizing and planning and everything else. So that was and is challenging as we move forward. But as I say, we're still learning, and hopefully we're getting better and better as we go through at it. But overall it's been really positive, I have to say.
It's a really interesting journey, because I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I used to work at 100 years ago. So I used to work was before Scope. It was in the day for it was the Spastic Society. Then I mean, it was. I think I was there, late 80s kind of thing. And, as a grassroots fundraiser, we had a very strange fundraising operation, but it was to do with home-based telephonists recruiting house-to-house collections. And they were all home-based, but of course that was pre-digital everything. So, we physically drove there and gave them phone books. It's like phone books, and we gave them scripts, and we gave them things to fill in, and they would ring and they would recruit collectors relating to a geographical area. And you'd probably recruit 1 out of every 10 that you call, roughly, and everybody picked the phone up then anyway, so it was kind of easier. But it was home based. It was an operation, quite low levels of supervision, but not much in terms of the regulation around it. And then the economics started to change, and then eventually that didn't work anymore. So it was all consolidated into a brand new building. We brought everybody into an office environment, and we were one of the first to have an office environment doing that in-house. It actually got sold off in the end, so I think it became one of the ongoing agencies. But it kind of moved from this relaxed and quite fragmented home-based environment through to a more maybe Americanized, one could argue. There was a kind of American view about telemarketing, horrible name, conversation, the kind of view, and then into this space where it was in there, and then it had a period of that. But my recollection, particularly in some of the great agencies who understood that actually they converted that into conversations and much more supporter-based listening as much as they were speaking conversations. But then it's interesting that now the tech is available, but it's taken us this to sort of move to that kind of model in a way. So you're at the point where you've done this and forced to do it. Do you think it kind of made sense before COVID? Would it have been a business decision that you might have decided to take? Because
probably not, if I'm completely honest. And now I look back, I know we won't go back to just office. I mean, we'll always keep the office, and people miss the office. I've just done a staff satisfaction survey, quite risky at this time, I have to say, because everybody's under so much stress, but 75% have said, the question of, do you enjoy working from home? Or would you prefer to work from home or from the office, or sometimes, so either? And 75% have said home, and 25% said either. Not one person said yes to the office. But people, they do want to, they miss the office banter and everything, so they'd like to do it some of the time, and I think that sounds a perfect kind of way forward for me at some point. We have got some people back in the office, so some of the guys that were furloughed that couldn't work from home, but we've just distanced out, so there's where there would have been 10 desks, there's 2. So they're completely distanced out. So we've got about 10 callers back in the office, and a couple of the back office go in every day as well. But so we're back a little bit, but I've got no plans to take that to.
I guess also the other thing is if you know that the model works and it's secure in many respects, it also changes your recruitment practice, because it kind of means that, you know, I think if you want to have a reasonable security and flexibility, probably in a work environment now, you probably need to recognize that wherever you live, if it's possible to have some ability to work from home, if you can. I feel so sorry for those people who've got, you know, no space or no room or no physical space, let alone, you know, incredibly hard to try and adapt that. But a lot of people have very quickly adapted. You know, there are those who were set and those who haven't. But it does mean your recruitment model potentially, you could argue, starts to change, because it must give you a lot more flexibility if it moving forward, presumably.
Well, it has. We've recruited. So we're up to, I think we've recruited, I've got numbers somewhere, I wrote it down, 64 or 54 fundraisers since lockdown. And we initially went out to, I really wanted to do, one of the big things was we want to keep going to protect our team's jobs. We didn't know about furlough or anything, obviously, at that point, at the very start. So we wanted to do that. We wanted, obviously, to keep the agency going. But we wanted to support the sector and keep the services there, because obviously the charities have just been decimated as far as the other type of income, and telephone is something that they can do. So one of the first things I did was actually contact some of the face-to-face agencies and say, look, we are going to be, we were in the middle of onboarding a fairly large new client. We're in the middle of pitching with Battersea, which we then ended up finishing the pitch process and doing our first Zoom pitch during, and then onboarding. So they're now onboarding and up and running, which is lovely. And that all went really, really smoothly, which was a surprise. That was another thing to learn. But I approached the face-to-face guys because it was like, look, if there's anybody that we can redeploy for a while to help the guys that are already in the sector, it's going to be good for us because they've already got the fundraising experience. It needs to adapt and change, obviously, but there's that base knowledge there, and it helps the guys that lost their jobs overnight. It could not do anything. So we did go out to, I think we employed about 15 in the end, face-to-face guys out to 50, which was, and some of them are now gradually going back to face-to-face, which we always knew it was kind of like
we'll come back. So these are guys who had face-to-face street experience, face-to-face operation. You could engage and have a fundraising conversation with people. And they were then moved into that skill, was into a home-based telephone.
And some of those we've got a couple working for us in Belfast, and we were only over Brighton based. So when you say our recruitment can change, we've got people in London, we've got people in Belfast, we've got people Yorkshire, I think. So it's changed the whole way that we can, you know, look at things in the future. And so interestingly, on the face-to-face side, some of those guys are saying, actually, we'd like to carry on doing this, as well as kind of splitting between this and face-to-face. So they've enjoyed learning a different aspect and a different channel, a different fundraising channel. So yeah, that's been really interesting. Not everybody can go from face-to-face to telephone or telephone to face-to-face.
No. It's a different, very different. It's a completely different skill. What was the conversation like with supporters? What's your view of how that's been? Because what you've done is you've moved quickly, you've converted a business operation and model, and your people have come along with you by and large to adapt that, and you're still bedding that down. I mean, we forget how long this is now. It feels like, it feels like months. Feels like a month. And it's only 4 months. It's not actually that long, really.
But we have all kind of got used to it so much now, haven't we?
Isn't it strange? It's kind of it's odd, isn't it? There's a kind. I know, I hate the phrase "new normal," but can't think of a better one in a bit.
I know.
Sort of works. What's the fundraising? And in the middle of all of that, you've talked to supporters. So I've met lots of people. I think I've, there are some very interesting stuff I've seen with people who are having conversations, proper conversations with supporters, in perhaps ways that they've not. I think a lot of fundraisers have actually often hidden. They haven't actually spoken to many supporters. They've actually put that out to other people, or they haven't done it themselves. So they've had that chance. But a dialogue with supporters at a time when we need their support must have been fascinating. There are lots who haven't had a conversation with. They've shrunk, and I think that's a huge error on their part. I think. What's your experience of that big dialogue with supporters when you ring them, when you engage them, and listening to what they're saying? What are they telling you? How has it worked? What's it felt like?
It's been amazing. It's actually been so heartwarming. I think there's a balance. When there's a crisis, it can bring out the best in people and it can bring out the worst in people. So there is a balance. I would say that there's more hard no's. The hard no's are harder. But on the other side, our results have been better. Our contact rate has been better because people are in. People want to talk. I think when it was especially when it was the stricter lockdown, people are in the house for a lot of the time. So many people were so happy to talk, and so many people were saying, even if they couldn't support, they were saying, keep up the good work. It's amazing that you're doing this. Keep going, keep doing it. There's some of the stories that have come out have just been, as I say, so heartwarming. I think people want to feel like they're doing something.
Yeah,
they want to help, and they're stuck, on furlough or whatever it is, and they want to help. I think the stats show this as well, that initially there was a really big cut in direct debits where people panicked and cancelled everything. And we did a reactivation campaign fairly soon afterwards. And the success rate of that was huge. And people were saying, look, to start off with, we did panic. We didn't know what was going to happen, but actually we feel like we're going to be all right now, so I can reinstate it. Really happy to reinstate. So that was really interesting. We also did a thank you call offering this for one of our larger clients, and it was basically a chance to say thank you and offer a payment holiday or a reduction in direct debit because of the situation. That was fascinating because what it resulted in was even more upgrades. So people were saying, no, it's fine, we want to give some more. And they were upgrading. And the very few payment holidays and very few that reduced it down. The majority said, it's absolutely fine, or I want to increase it. So what we've seen has been incredibly, incredibly positive.
Yeah.
And yes, some amazing people out there. They just want to support and they want to do something.
Yeah. And in a way, we've got a kind of responsibility to I think there are people who just seem to be quite nervous of actually, like you're going to upset them, or you're going to, they want to be spoken to, they want to be engaged. It's the perfect opportunity to talk and explain and listen and engage. And, their natural generosity just seems to just flow from that. I think you kind of honor them by that call. I've always thought the phone call, the intimate kind of conversation that goes on, if it works really well, is one of the best ways in which donors feel good. You
have the chance to say thank you. You can find out what they're thinking. The insight that you get from a phone call, the insights that we give back to charities is amazing, because we're able to tell them real time what their supporters are thinking right now. Because we do a mixture of acquisition and donor development, existing donor development. So when you're talking to existing donors and you're getting that feedback, and every single day we're giving feedback to our clients of what their donors are thinking. And I'd say at the moment it's still very positive. I don't know how that's going to work as we move forward, because people are starting to lose their jobs a lot more as the furlough obviously system is winding down. And that positivity, it'll be interesting to see over the next few months, and we need to be really mindful of that when we're talking to people. And that's obviously one of the things that we talk to the guys about, is be really mindful, because you don't know what situation that person is in.
No.
And we say this, you know, anyway, even in the office, it's that you have no idea. You're calling someone in their life and you're interrupting their day, and you don't know what is happening in their day at that time. And right now, we have to be even more mindful of that.
I mean, somebody said to me a little while ago that they're saying, you know, you need to think of this as in the context of this being, first of all, a health crisis, but then that has a different psychology that moves into an economic crisis because that has a different psychology. I mean, they are the same because they're blending in and one has an impact over the other. But people will resort to a kind of familiarity of recession and economic loss, which is familiar to them. They haven't with a health one. They've never been through this. So, you know, and when people, it is interesting because over time, I think that the sector's found that it's never quite been as bad. The economic downturns have never quite been as bad as people expect them to be.
Yeah.
You know, if you are a donor and want to give and feel committed, and and it's okay if you give up for a while and you know, you give people a bit of space, but it's not always as bad as that. But it will be very, very different as we move 6 to 10 months. We're going to know a lot more, I guess, as we move forward.
And I do think the economic downturn is going to be huge.
I think it's going to be much bigger than people think. Yeah,
I really do. And so I do think there'll be a lot more redundancies. Well, seeing it now, it's almost every day there's announcements, and unfortunately in the charity sector as well. The announcements of redundancies are a daily thing, and I think that's going to be a very stressful situation for a lot of people.
Paradox, isn't it? We've got to ask. You know, we've got to be much more confident of being able to ask people well during this process. I mean, always, but just particularly through this part. What have you learned then in terms of the business, the provision of the delivery of the business, and what have you learned about the way in which fundraising, the supporter conversation, may or may not have changed? What's the two lessons that you might reflect on those two areas?
Gosh, I have to say, I think the conversation, that the tone of the conversation has always been very, or the way we do it is very, it's very personal. It's very, it's not scripted. We're not scripted. We have called guides. It's very easy flowing conversation. It's a real conversation, and I think the way it works now is very similar. It's a very similar thing. I don't think that's particularly changed, apart from the fact we obviously have to be really mindful of what people are experiencing at that moment. But the actual tone of the conversation that we have is exactly the same as it was. It's talking to people in the right way. There are some of the benefits are interesting benefits that I'd never even thought about, but one of the things of not having the office noise in the background and other callers in the background is that a caller is potentially more present in the call. There's no noise in the background. It is probably to the caller, to the supporter
Intimate.
On the other end, it sounds more like a personal call because they can't hear in the background. So that's a really interesting one, and a really positive one, I think. And I know for our fundraisers, when they do go back in the office, I think it'll be a bit of a shock to go back and have all that in the background. So that's definitely something that's a real positive. And I think the other side is the wellbeing side. I mean, it's something that I bang on about it all the time. It's one of my passions, and the workplace culture side. That's something that we are learning. So those lessons are ongoing, and we're not there yet. We're not there as in knowing exactly how to deal with that. I don't suppose anyone is ever. You're always learning, aren't you? But I think that side, and being so aware of it. We're always aware of it, but now that's something that is rising to the fore more and more. And I think that is going to get worse, because I think as people, when we first got into lockdown, everybody came with us and everybody was positive. Yes, we've done it. We've done this change and we've making it work and it's fantastic. After a while, they're still in their homes, still making these calls, that can be quite draining, I think, without feeding off other people's energy that you get. So I think so to maintain that level of positivity that we've got becomes harder. So that means we have to work harder at it all the time. So that's an ongoing lesson, I would say. I'm trying to think of anything else. It's all such a
The well-being, just a bit on the well-being bit. So I've got one of the conversations I'm going to do in this little mini series I've sort of decided to do was she doesn't know it yet, by the way. So I'll just. But Amy Pollock, who's a good friend of mine, there's an agency I work with in Canada. Who I'm good friends with, Blakely, and they've done an incredibly good job of moving their entire workforce, they're very sociable. They've got an amazing culture, and what they've done is that very quickly, in the same way almost within 2-3 days, everybody had to go. And they were nervous because their culture and the way that they interact with each other would have been a problem. But Amy led a program with them called Leading in Pajamas, which was their leadership program that went through the whole of lockdown, and how they brought people together and created support and mentoring and coaching and community in the way that was familiar to their experience as a culture and that she's got a great story about that. So when I'll send you the thing when that comes out, because that is really powerful what they've done, and it's so important, because the people, when someone's having a conversation with a supporter, it is just about the people. It's the people who connect, and if they haven't got the sense of well-being that they take into that conversation, kind of halts the whole thing.
Absolutely, I've always said that if someone's in the office and they're really not happy and they're doing a job that they don't enjoy, they're not going to have a quality phone call.
No,
they can't carry it on. It's absolutely impossible. That well-being side, the fundraiser side for us is at the real core of what we do, and I think sometimes historically fundraisers, telephone or face-to-face, have been a little bit at the bottom end of the pile in terms of respect. And so one of the things that we've done is turn that model upside down. And we always say the fundraisers are the most important people in our organisation. They're above me, they're above anyone else, because they're the person that is speaking to your supporter on the end of the phone.
Yeah.
And they're your biggest asset and your biggest risk at the end of the day. So that well-being side is 100% more important than anything else, because they have to be positive, and every call has to be positive. And if you're not happy in your job and you're not looked after, that's not going to happen. So I think, that
energy when you bring together, when you're in an office environment, you're trying to do it that kind of way is, but actually I think the model might work very well now, in a sense that if you can find, that you get 70% kind of where you are getting on with it in that work-life balance, but you can create a 30% space where you can energize, bring together. I mean, it's sort of interesting that I used to have the same sort of approach with community fundraisers, because community fundraisers would often be isolated and geographically all over the place. And, and I remember, bringing people, I've always prioritized the sort of monthly meeting of the leadership that would come together, and, finance would always go, but actually the most important thing was a 2-day meeting with one overnight, with the ability to actually let your hair down and get on with people. It kind of cemented something, so it became a point each time. So when they went back, they did their job better, and then they brought back into that environment together, and it was a really, really important piece. And I've never forgotten that. In a way, I've seen organizations now who, if you prioritize some of that, I think it changes it. If you don't, I think you pay a price. People is the price.
Absolutely. I'm really proud to say that fundraisers, there is a natural kind of, not churn, I hate that word, but you do lose people, although we have fundraisers who've been with us from day one.
Yeah.
And the year before, who's still with us. Back office, we've lost one person in 3 years, and that was someone who we knew she was only on loan to us for a while. She was kind of going up the ladder, and she was amazing, but she went to her dream job, which is amazing. But the loyalty that you get, and the the quality of what you do is going to be so much better if you keep staff on board, if you keep staff as a team and you develop that whole team. We have, you know, team purity. It is team purity. We are such a good team, and it's such a good feeling. And say I've done this staff satisfaction survey, and it's come back amazingly well. I mean, I'm
Lovely.
after it, so it's so important to me that people are happy, and it's just, but it makes sense. It makes sense if you look after people and you keep people happy, and whether it's going for drinks, and you know, obviously that side we've not been able to do, or whether it's bringing pizzas into the office, which again we haven't been able to do, but it's how you replace that. I mean, teams for us, I have to say, there's one of the things that is a positive is that during a shift, there's a constant narrative. Team, sorry, I'm doing that because my screen's up there with the narrative, but there's a constant narrative
down the side of the
people chatting, and then the fundraising managers are talking to the, you know, are giving tips out or sharing stuff. Memes are our best friend, and there's a never-ending, seems to be a never-ending supply of memes, and it's just that sometimes the banter's there, and also you see fundraisers helping other people, helping other fundraisers. And just by saying, oh, I've found that this proposition is really working at the moment. People are really engaged in this. So they're sharing tips themselves between each other. And so to be able to see that through a shift has been a really positive thing, and that helps. But there's still more that we can do. I know there's still more we can do.
What's your personal lesson then through all of this?
Follow your gut. Follow your gut. I do that pretty much, but the gut feel was we need to do this and we need to do this now, and then have that go 100%. We didn't know if it would work. We didn't know if it would work. Got to be honest. You know, who could know? You know it can technically work, but you don't know if it's actually going to work. So the biggest lesson is have that belief, pass that belief to everyone else. And then they will believe it as well. And when you pass that belief, and that's like passion, isn't it? When you pass that passion on, get everybody on that journey with you, then you can make it happen. And you've just got to be very positive on that, and keep that belief all the way through. And yeah, that's my main one. Yeah.
And what's next for you and Purity then?
More of the same. We have before all this, we were looking at a couple of other products that we're working on. It isn't necessarily the normal, more on the strategy side and insight piece, because we're doing so much on insight anyway. So we're looking at different products that we wanted to launch. So it's obviously been delayed a little bit because this has taken up so much time. We've capacity's increased no end, and we've taken on some new clients that were on the way anyway. But we've also had, one of the things that's been a shame is we've had to say no to a few people because we've had so many people knocking on the door. Because
it's a nice place to be.
It's a nice place to be, but it's not, because we really wanted to support the charities. But yeah, more of the same. The most important thing for me is that we keep that level of quality, and that is above anything else what we want to do. But yeah, carry on doing what we're doing. We will go back to the office at some point, but not 100%. I think we'll work a model that's half and half, so that you can get that environment, but also have the opportunity to work from home as well.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity right now. I can really think it. So where can people contact you and Purity and touch base with you then?
Yeah, so the website is purityfundraising.com. So there's a contact form on there that people can get hold of us. My email's helen@purityfundraising.com. We kept things very simple, just name at purityfundraising.com. So yeah, come and say hi on there.
Perfect. I'll put all those. I'll put that in the notes on the bottom of this then. So just to say thank you. This is a lovely conversation and a great story. It's such a uplifting thing to hear, not just from the way that you guys responded to it, but adapted it and kept things going, but in a way now kind of added a better element. When people talk about building back better, there's a definite sense of that there, and it's lovely to hear such positive conversations with supporters who, for all of us, are at the heart of what we do. So lovely to talk to you.
Really nice to talk to you. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.